sun. I see your name is when I see your face.
Freddie Bourne. What's up, Freddie?
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
Not much. Just hanging out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way. I appreciate it. I know I've been wanting to do like an interview in general for just kind of talking, because a lot of people don't get a chance to hear me off stage, so I appreciate you.
They hear you when you're on stage.
They hear me when I'm on.
Even if the microphone's off, they can still hear you.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm very happy and sad about at the same time.
Well, I'm saying you project very well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I hope that overcomes in this interview that people can hear
I'm
me.
going to make sure that we don't also peak when you talk.
Okay,
good.
That's fair.
I just lowered the volume a little bit.
I literally saw it like flash.
Cool. Well, let's talk about probably the main reason why you're here. You have two new singles that have been released. Or in the process of being released. First one was 50th and 9th in Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
Create a story or create a song.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, the title, I mean, a lot of my titles and for a lot of my songs are not ever in the song. So the one reason why I named it this type of title, I try to make sure they're like a little bit long, but like something that people will
Memorable.
get. Yeah, because I mean, you can remember the chorus and stuff like that, but I think the chorus is pretty cliche, and I didn't want it to be a cliche title.
Okay.
So
cool. Well, let's talk a little about the recording process and how is that done?
Yeah, it's a different experience. So like I met Bajo. He is an artist in the Netherlands. He was on The Voice of Holland. He was a contestant all the way till Knockouts. So like right before the live shows, he got cut. And I reached out to him because I really liked his style. He was doing songs on the show that were very different from what the show typically does, which is mainly, mainstream pop songs. He was doing, he did ABBA, he did Does Your Mother Know, in a rock vibe. Then for the knockout rounds, he did Beach Boys, he did Surfin' USA. So I really just loved his style. He was, phenomenal guitar player, great singer, great rock singer, very reminiscent of like the Bryan Adams and like kind of like that type of rock vibe, soft rock, and then a little bit goes to the hard rock, a little bit of Chicago, a little bit of Toto. And I reached out to him via Instagram. We just started, talking. It was probably around the time that you and I were working on the last EP that he started seeing the videos, and he really enjoyed the performance of one of the songs they did. Of one of the songs, I think was Please Hear the Words I Don't Speak. That was the live version that you recorded, actually. And he really liked that. And I mean, we just back and forth, just saying hi to each other. And then eventually over the summer, he reached out and he said, we're going to Skype sometime. And then from there, it just kind of became this big thing where we Skyped every weekend. And then the recording process has been quite interesting because obviously I'm not there physically to do it. So I have the melody down, I have the lyrics down, and I send everything over, the chords and the lyrics to him, and the video supplement of what I do. Okay. That I usually send you to like get your like idea of like, hey, what do you think about this? And from there, he either says if he really likes it or doesn't like it, and then he kind of advances it from there. And he plays like all the instruments, so he does all the production at his own house. And then kind of sends that back to you. Yep. You kind of give some feedback, and then at some point you're like, cool, now I'm ready to record the vocals. Or? Yeah. I mean, most of the time, so like obviously my songs, it's difficult because I'm not there, so the you have to kind of take into consideration emotionally where the song context lies, and so sometimes he doesn't realize it at first, like what the song's really about completely, and sometimes it might be a little bit of a language barrier too, sometimes to kind of understand what the context of it is. So if it's like a sad song, for example, but he produces it and it sounds more cheerful in a major key, then I'm like, this doesn't work because this is not that type of song. So we've had like some like things where we had to compromise on that. I mean, particularly for these two singles, though, I would say they've been pretty easy because the vibe's always been there. Right. So that's a big thing for me, is that he's really big on technical stuff. I'm really big on vibes. So
So kind of
it's a
different sides of the.
It's a counteract, yeah, definitely. Because I'm not all about mainstream. He's really all about making things sound commercial. So luckily enough, as long as my lyrics don't sacrifice and the message is clear, I
think that's cool because I mean, just hearing these two songs, they do have a more pop oriented realm, or something where
it's more
listenable and appealing, which I think is good for your stuff because you do have a great voice, great lyrics, you have that stuff already down, and especially we'll get into what we did together. That was kind of the complete opposite intentionally of trying to do something that was popular. So far from just to balance it, I think is a cool thing for me to hear. Just as a just to kind of. Just see another side of what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, my whole, when I started doing this stuff.
I mean, you started there too. Right?
Yeah, I started doing that type of stuff, but it just wasn't fruitful because I was working. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about anyone that I worked with back then. I worked with great musicians. I worked with great producers. I handpicked all the people that I worked with on my first album, the really first album back in 2013. I just don't think for myself, and I could say this after releasing the last EP, was that I just wasn't ready to take ownership of really making executive decisions. And I was very fortunate that I did that for free, that entire album. And so I felt like there was a little bit of a thing where I was like, I feel bad if I tell him to make all these adjustments, and he's putting his heart and soul into doing something for the song. There was one song on there that I just straight up, it became so trip hop and poppy, and lyrically it didn't make any sense, but because I was so invested of how much work he put into it, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I linearly, you listen to the album in full, it sounds good for what it is, but I legitimately listen back to it and I go, there were so many things that 19, 20 years old that I would have been like, hey, I think I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have done this. I was probably 70% satisfied with the album when it was on iTunes, and that's probably not a feeling you should have, that it's 70% satisfied.
But also, it's your first thing you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not, that's what, experience and time gets you, is the ability to now make more decisions that are understood by you, as you're working with other people.
Growth in it, and then experience in general, so better things to write about, rather than, those songs were all about trying to break into the mainstream. So I remember being at a high of no one that I knew was doing it, making an album, and then I remember stupid me was just waiting on Billboard.com, am I gonna crack the top 200? And obviously, I knew that wasn't highly possible, but then I got aggravated at people that were on the charts that were not, in my opinion, considered, good artists. But then that was also my mindset back then, was if you can't sing, then that's not good music. And then, a year went by, and then I actually learned and I listened to more music about the art of it, and you listen about experience, and you learn about what makes people great. That didn't matter anymore. It was that, you can hear anyone basically cover a Beatles song, for example, and it might sound vocally better than Yesterday's has been covered so many times. You've heard people make it a ballad and they're like, oh my god, better than the original. It will never be better than the original. The original has a reason why it was that way to begin with, and that's what makes it pure, that's what makes it authentic, that's what makes it good. So that's kind of what my linear thinking got changed completely back then. So that's cool. That was ideally what happened there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm happy it's getting more pop, kind of back to the roots, but the right way, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. It's you'll have different facets of what you offer, but it's now tied into something I think that's a little bit more digestible to right away.
That's a very good adjective. Yeah, very good adjective.
Might be able to then people kind of get to know you, and then they can dive deeper into it instead of offering again, just because. Well, we worked on.
I'm waiting for people to listen in, and right in this moment,
I'll play segments of the song.
Yeah, and then legitimately they're gonna be like, "What were they working on? Why are they laughing at it?" And then we don't have to dive into it yet. Let them be on a cliffhanger.
Waves crashing in. Cringe when he says it
do want to talk about from the new albums. I guess my question for you is, you're working on with somebody that's not in the same room. Like, did you find I'm sure there's some challenges. Did you also find things that actually made it maybe easier that you could sit with some of the stuff and before you had to send it out instead of just maybe reactionary decisions when you're in the room or in a studio with somebody?
Yeah, that's been really like the biggest hassle has been the time difference, because we're about 6 or 7 hours ahead, we're behind, because I think by the time we usually would have meetings to talk about songs on the weekdays sometimes, because my weekends would be kind of scattered because of like going on interviews for jobs and stuff like that now, since my contract's coming up, is that I wouldn't be able to get out until like 6 o'clock at night because I'd be working throughout the day. He's very fortunate that he gets to do this for a living. He's able to make money off of the shows that he does and stuff like that, and just promotion that way. So he kind of makes his own schedule. Unfortunately for me, I do not. I have to be bound by something. Plus, I'm in school still. Right. Finishing up my master's and stuff like that. And so by the time I get done at 6 o'clock, it's midnight there, and I'm not gonna make him stay up at midnight for a business meeting. So that's been definitely the big challenge, because like there's that communication of like, hey, I can do this time to this time. So we always have to make sure like the weekends are pretty like set in stone. So like that way, like if
setting the schedule is pretty important then.
Yeah, I mean it's a very big thing, but like obviously life happens. I will say though, and I think the other challenge has been, obviously he's his music in itself, his philosophy is good vibrations, which is obviously the Beach Boys type of quota. And he has a lot of his music is very happy-go-lucky, very, very good, very upbeat, and I'm not that. They've spiked again. And so like bringing a song to him is sometimes more or less of a personal thing, where it's just like, this is,
you have to kind of tell him what your goal is, or like what you're aiming for, so that he doesn't inject too much of what he normally does. Or
no, because actually that's been like probably the one thing that he's been really good at is not overdoing it. Okay. And I think that's one thing he made sure of as a producer, and also as a friend, is like, I'm not gonna I'm gonna make sure that I run this by you first, and at the end of the day, this is your executive decision of whether or not this is good or bad. Right. We've agreed most of the time on everything. But like I would say, like the setback is like, if I have a sad song, it might be very heavy, and he's just like, I can't listen to it right now, or like I can't work on it right now. And that I appreciate it, because at least now I know he's at least digesting into my message, and like trying the best to convey my message as best as I can. Like one of the other songs that we're doing that's going to be on the EP, but it's not going to be a single, he didn't realize until he asked me what it was about. And I told him the context of it, and he goes, oh wow, he's like, yeah, that's, and then he was about to work on it, he's like, after hearing that, man, I gotta take a breath. Yeah, so right. But like that, I would say that's a positive, but it's mostly positives. It's because it's quick turnarounds. Like, he does everything himself, which is the greatest, so impressive that he does literally all the instruments on the production side, and then sends it back to me, and then the only difficult thing is making sure that I can make space in my schedule and make sure it's around everyone else's schedule at Silver Horse to be like,
Right. So you recorded the vocals.
Yeah.
At Silver Horse.
Yeah, I've worked with Ben. I've worked with John on both of them. And probably going to work with Ben and John again on the last one coming up, actually, because we already recorded 3 vocals.
Cool.
Out of the 4 songs. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. And that's the EP that is the childhood party that nobody came to.
So the title is the childhood birthday party that nobody came to.
I saw you already have the album art, which is classic.
Yeah, it's a picture of me in the first grade, frowning in front of a fireplace with a piece of cake.
With nobody there.
With nobody there. It's kind of sad, but I remember someone saw the cover and actually said, that guy looks just like you. How did you find someone? I'm like, because it is me.
Yeah.
I had someone photo manipulate, and I in that picture I had a smile And then I just remember telling the artist that I worked with him on Heavy Vibes and Piano.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I just need you to use this photo. I need you to make me look sad. He goes, oh, that's easy. And then within like 2 days, he goes, how does this look? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so great.
Yeah.
So it was really funny to relish in such a high achieving thing of like, thank you so much for this. You made me look like a miserable first grader.
Right.
But the EP is it's 4 songs, and the concept of the entire thing is about fear, and the way that it works is there's the way that I addressed it was 4 different types of fear.
Okay.
So one song is about the fear of being alone, the fear of losing someone, the fear of losing yourself, and then also the fear of how the world's gonna end up being. So it kind of takes
so
it kind of takes
personal and kind of global ideas.
Yeah. You know, it can be universal. I think it's universal in any way, shape, or form. You know, I wanted to make sure that I made that concept very clear. And originally, I mean, there was supposed to be 4 songs on it, and then it became 5, and then it went back down to 4, and then it went to 3, and then it ended with 4. So I mean, it's been great. You know,
Cool.
It's been a good.
Well, let's I guess go from your latest thing to the beginning, or at least the beginning of how we met, and then Freddie and I worked on your second release, which was I wrote these songs with Heavy Vibes and Piano.
Yes,
which is quite an experience.
Mr. Bourne, this is Bill Icey here in Augusta, Georgia. If you could please give me a call back at 706
Help me, drowning in the rain. Touch me, is there a beating heart? Tell me, only ways up.
Cool. Yeah, I guess let's transition into us working together.
Yeah.
It's actually the first time I took I guess you call it like a producer role, and also doing some of the recording and mixing as well.
Yeah.
But we worked very much very
In unison,
closely,
yeah.
and it was a really cool process. And I mean, you can, if you want to, talk a little about the background, but it was a very challenging and deep concept album, which I think allowed us to explore some places that you definitely don't hear. People go that deep in their music.
Yeah, I mean, I know from the start, when we met, I knew that I definitely wanted to work on something with you. And you brought up how you had a new spot. You recently were really kind of up and coming in terms of like doing your own thing, and you talked about your experience of like kind of like you were getting away from the corporate world and really doing what you wanted to do. And I was like, that's genius, because that's ideally who I want to work with, is someone that's really passionate about the art, and not necessarily the success on paper. The success on paper, because I think people need to realize that success is not rated off of views or streams or anything like that. It's rated off of affection from other people and relationship between audiences and stuff like that. And I think people lose sight of that. So I knew, if you quit corporate world, which is essentially that's their strategy, is to try to just boost audiences, to just chime in, just get numbers. And you're like, no, I want to just invest my time in people that,
that believe in
that you believe in, or that that want to be here and that do it for the right things and are willing to grow. I was like, yeah, this is someone I want to work with. And after the last album, I was like, I was gonna go back to him, but the one thing I really enjoyed was that being in this scene just made me feel like a better person, a better musician, and it made me explore things that I was so unconfident in. I mean, I remember the first time I talked to you about these songs that we did for the EP, which is I wrote these songs with Heavy Vibes and Piano, that I was like, I want to do it. I just want to, sit on the ground and just play. And you're like, okay, then do that. And I was like, well, that's weird. He goes, he's like, tell him, middle finger to them, you know? And that was the first time I was like, okay, well, he's right. And it worked because, like, I was the first time I felt comfortable. It made sense. And, you know, when we started talking about, you know, obviously the album, not obviously, because a lot of people still kind of question sometimes what it's about. You know, so it's about the journey of grief, you know. It starts off with, you know, voicemails and stuff like that are real, and it hurts a little bit. I know when we were mixing it, that was a difficult thing for me, which is, I think, good why I had you to counteract it, because very fortunate for you, you haven't experienced that thing yet, right. And I hope you don't anytime soon.
Thank you.
So, like, having you there as a support was really big, because it was such an emotional, taunting album, and I remember I warned you. I said I want it to be as raw as possible. Mm-hmm. So, like, the things when it comes to mistakes, let's keep the mistakes, especially with the last 3 songs, because I want them to sound that way. And you really kind of, like, you know, we worked. You know, I definitely say you took leadership when it came to a lot of the aspects of production and the mixing, and, like, kind of making the final decisions after I'd be like, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, and then you'd be like, okay, I'm going to do it, but under these circumstances and conditions and collaboration, like, this is what I think is best. And I'm like, yes, because you made a really good case most of the time. Yeah. Actually, no, all the time. And
thanks, Freddie.
Yeah, and no, but that was, like, the thing. Like, you know, you said it was your first time doing it, and that was not nerve-wracking for me, because I was like, well, this is the first time I'm really going to take ownership, so I think it's good that I'm working with someone that I can work in unison with, rather than someone that's going to be like, hey, this is not commercial enough, this is not mainstream enough. And I told you from the beginning, I'm like, if you want something that's going to sell, then I don't want to work with you. Right. So please be aware that this is just my vision. I gave you, like, I remember charts and everything, just sending it your way, and you're like, all right, you're overly prepared. I think we have something to work with. Like, let's just go to a space and just record, you know, 3 songs.
Well, that was kind of the process too. Is like the last 3 songs were live takes.
The last and that first day.
Right. And then the other 3 that we put together, I think the concept was, let's try out a lot of different ideas and kind of piece some of this together in the mixing.
Yeah.
And if you listen, you know, to those songs in particular, a lot of, you know, just like things we did with, like, reverb and a lot of background vocals and a lot of synthy swirls and things coming in and out of each other. It doesn't necessarily have a structure.
No,
but it does. It feels of a whole, which I thought was cool. I just thought that it allowed us to kind of explore a new territory that I personally hadn't written or worked on a song that way. So,
and that was also the first time I did that as well. I straight up was at one point where I just went, you know, I just wanted to be experimental, and I wanted to kind of be more or less of this thing of not spoon-feeding people, but kind of getting them to a place where it's a little bit more open-minded. And I think that was kind of my whole gesture, was to be open-minded and not spoon-feed everyone. Like, this is the information, this is how you gather it, this is what it's about. You know, and I think the big thing was that I wanted to confuse people a little bit, because I guess because people heard some growth and I was gone for a while, and you know, some people were confused, obviously, when it came out. Some people really praised it a lot because they were like, I didn't expect anything from you from this, but this is, you know, people use the word genius. I you know, that's a very high caliber thing to say. I appreciate it. I don't consider myself any bit of a musical genius of any sorts. Some people questioned my sanity. Some people thought that I was on drugs when I did it. And I don't question.
Well, it's a challenging listen. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's I think also a rewarding listen. Like, the more you kind of give some time to it, I think for me, going through the experience of hearing those voicemails and, you know, and being able to dig into the lyrics, hearing the songs enough times. It was very apparent for me what we're talking about, what we're getting at here. But it might not be right away, or it might be kind of the album where if you don't actually give it its time, you might not ever actually get to what it's really about.
Well, the thing is that the thing I had to tell a lot of people was that when I started having people listen to it behind closed doors, that, like, were more or less of the gatekeepers of, like, getting their vibes and getting their opinions, and then going to you one last time being like, okay, I think based off of what we had the focus groups think, using kind of theory things, is that I was like, oh, you know, like, based off of this might be something, and then we both were like, oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense now. Was that some people would be like, hey, I wanna listen to it. I'm gonna listen to the rest of it tonight, and then I was like, well, no, I'm like, that's not how this album works, because it's like a straight, you have to listen kind of through,
right.
Because that's the whole thing. It starts.
They all connect with each other.
Yeah,
too.
so when people tell me that they're like, oh, I got halfway through it, I'm like, oh, it's not gonna make any sense. And I remember my songwriting partner Bill, I brought that up to him. And I said, no, Bill, like, you're gonna have to like listen to it full through. Like, if you can't listen to to it right now, it's fine. But like, when you have, you have like
to kind of give yourself that
time.
time.
If you have like 45 minutes, it was 30 something minutes. But if you have that amount of time in the day, you gotta listen. That's when you can listen to the entire thing, because you can't just scatter it up. So he eventually did listen to it. He goes, okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
Well, I just want to say that experience kind of started my one of the trajectories that I've been on of kind of helping people produce music. So thank you for I think there's a lot of trust there for going through that process, and I'm really happy with happy as much as you'd be happy about something that's very emotional and definitely a sad album or something. But I think there's a lot of maybe like healing in that process, and
there was, yeah. I mean, and I'll say this first and foremost is thank you for doing that all and working with me, because I think personally for myself, I think there was still some doubts of whether or not I wanted to continue to do music, and I think a lot of people question that as well. But I questioned probably the most out of everyone was like whether or not I wanted to continue with it. I was very, very discouraged at the time. I think I was just really stressed out, kind of going from one extreme to the next in terms of my life. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when we worked on that together and actually getting some like gratification of working with someone side by side and seeing the work happen and paid off like that, like you definitely were pound for pound the reason why I still keep going. So I mean, that means a lot. I mean, whether take it or leave it, but I appreciate that, because I don't think I'd be doing the stuff now and having the strangest success with the new songs now.
Yeah, well,
right?
I mentioned Freddie's right behind you too on the Netherlands charts right now.
The only time I ever thought U2 and myself would be said in the same sentence or the same charts was like maybe if it was like a chart that I made on Word documents or something like that. So to see that U2 is right above me,
they're in your scopes.
Yeah, which is weird, because I don't know if that means like Bono is gonna be like, who is this guy? No, I don't think he really cares about that anymore.
Netherlands charts.
Yeah, like out of nowhere. Yeah. But yeah, it's weird.
No, that's great, man. I think the new stuff it does have something that's accessible.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy for it. I'm happy that people are listening in, but they're still able to hear the lyrics and the storytelling behind it. That's that biggest key.
Well, I think the first two albums you did, one was dramatically to one extreme, one was dramatically to the other, and now you have that range, and you can find continue to work on what comes from your heart and from your soul. And I think you've always anytime I've ever worked with you or heard you perform, you've always had that. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate that.
All right.